In this lesson, we're going to learn how to use reference video to rotoscope animation onto. Now, we're going to use this video as reference. We're not going to try to match it 100%, but we're going to use it to get our key poses before we get into our animation refinement. So we'll walk through the whole step of setting this up in Maya and referencing that video, adding some constraints for the hand to this barbell that we've created, and then running through the animation process. So let's get started. So we have a blank scene here, and the first thing we want to do is we want to create a camera that we're going to be looking through that our reference video will be attached to, and that we can keep stationary while we use the perspective to view our poses. So let's go up here to create, and we're just going to go down here to cameras, and we'll go to camera. Now our camera will come in, it'll be at the origin. So I've already worked out the values that we want to put in here. So if you just type in the translates, you type 605 in the X, 230 in the Y, and then 515 in the Z. Your rotations are going to be negative 7.5, and then your rotates, pardon me, negative 7.5 in the X, and then 49.55 in the Y. So that's just the math that I've already done. The next thing we want to do is we want to go into this camera. So if you go to Panels, Perspective, go to Camera 1. We'll rename this to Roto Camera. And then we'll go ahead up here to our View, and then we're going to add an image plane. Now I have mine as a movie. You can also add images, and I'll show you quickly how to do those in just a sec. So if you go to Import Movie, we're going to find our movie, and we're going to go down here to Power Clean. Now I've already set this movie up and I've clipped it, and you'll see that it'll come in. Now we need to do a couple of adjustments to it. So with our image plane selected, we'll go into our attribute editor, hit Control A. We want to do a couple of things. The first one is when we bring our character in, this is going to be sitting in front of it. So let's do that first. If we go to File, Create Reference, and then we're going to go to find our character rig, and mine's going to be called Character Rig, and I'm going to bring it in. You just ignore that. So you can see that you should be able to see it here in your roto camera, but the roto is in front of it. So what you want to do is go into our image plane. You just can either select it in the scene, or you can just click on your camera. It'll come up here in the attribute editor. Just click on image plane. And then you want to go over here and you want to change the depth to 1000. You'll see that when you do that, it'll move the character in front there. And then you also want to click on Fit to Resolution Gate. This is going to fit it better in your camera's view. So Fit to Resolution Gate. Okay, and that's a good start. You'll see that our character is going to be a little bit smaller than the character there. We've already got the camera lined up, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the focal length. This is going to change the lens of the camera. We'll just change this to 45, and you'll see that when we do that, our character is going to line up pretty nicely with the character in the scene. Now we're going to move the feet so that they're more in line with that, but we'll go ahead and use that for now. The character, when he stands up, is going to be a little bit taller than our character, but that's okay. We're just using it for reference. Now, if you want to use images, there's a different method for this. So let's go ahead and we'll just go to our attribute editor, and we'll select our image plane, and we'll just go ahead and hit select, and then we're just going to hit delete. We'll create a new one using a series of sequential images, and I'll show you how to do that. So if you want to use a series of images, there's a little bit of a different process for how to animate those images. If you select view, you can go into image plane, and we'll just import an image. And it'll have the same process, so it's just going to pop up a window. We'll go ahead and go find it. Mine's going to be in source, and I've created a series of sequential frames. That's just the movie. You can export this from any video editing software. And I'll just go ahead and hit OK and open it up. Now you can see it does the same thing. It brings this in. So we again need to hit to fit to resolution gate. We want to set the depth to 1000. And there we go. So by default, you could just run through and you're not going to see anything there. So what you want to do is you want to go back up to the top. You want to say use image sequence, and you can see it creates an expression that automatically keys it to the motion of the scene. So if we scrub through, let's just go ahead and expand our time to 100 frames. And you can see now we run through and our movie ends at about 70 frames. So we'll just bracket our preview window to 70. And so now you should be able to just play through, and it'll play the animation on those still frames the same way it would if it was a movie. Okay, so once we've got that done, we need to set up our scene so that our character can animate using the same barbell that this guy is lifting. So let's go ahead and just import. We're just going to create an import and we'll find our barbell and I'll go ahead and import it. I've created a barbell. It's just a simple primitive here. So we'll go ahead and start with that. Now, the way that I'm going to show you how to set this up is going to be kind of a hacky method. Most rigs will have functionality that will allow you to attach to an object dynamically in a scene, but what we're going to do is we're going to actually create some constraints and then animate those constraints within the scene so that our character's hands are going to stick to the barbell. So first thing, let's clean some stuff up. We'll go up here to Reference Editor. We're just going to rename our character to Rig, then we'll close that down. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to create a locator, and I'm going to call this our hand target, and I'm going to group that, and I'm going to call that our hand constrain. Okay, and I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to make one for the left hand too. Now, you don't have to do anything with this right now. We're just going to rename them. Okay, then we're going to select both of those. We're going to group those, and we're going to call this hand underscore constraints. Okay, once we've done that, you shouldn't be able to see much. You can scale the locators so that they're a little bit more accessible. Just go ahead and scale them up like this. And then we'll exit out and we'll go into our for view. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna line this hand constraints group up with the barbell. So you're gonna go to hold down or V and snap to points, and you're gonna snap in the side view to the center of the barbell. So now that constraint, this hand constraints, is going to allow us to rotate the hand constraints around the barbell. Again, this is not the most ideal method, but it is a way that you can do it with any rig, and it's kind of the old school method of how to do it. So the R hand constraint is going to be over here, and the L hand constraint is going to be over here. So if we just look at these from the front view and zoom out, we want the R hand constraint about 2/3 of the way or 3/4 of the way to the end of the bar, and we want the L hand constraint to be about the same. We can look at them numerically and just say this is going to be -60, and we'll call this 60. So they're at the same places that they should be. This is going to be roughly lining up with the hand positions of the character's hands on the bar. So then what we need to do is just switch our legs to IK, and we're going to select our root group, and we're going to start by moving our root group down so that we can kind of get a sense of where the hands should be. So they're going to move our root down, and in a clean, you want your root position back. Your hips are going to be back and bent forward. So we're going to do that too. We'll change our move to world. We're just going to move that forward. Now, the feet are going to have to scoot back just a little bit, and the feet will be moving in this animation. So we'll just go ahead and position them correctly based on the character's reference. And like I said, it doesn't need to line up perfectly. Just get them in a relatively good position to make it look like your character's in the same pose. Okay, so we've got that done. Next thing we want to do is we want to select our back. Whoops. So you saw what I just did is I accidentally moved the camera. You can hit the left square bracket to move it back to its previous view. But let's make it so that we can't do that again. Let's just go ahead and lock our camera. You can go to view and lock camera, or you can click this little button in your menu system. Okay, so let's get out of there and let's bring up our perspective window. Our perspective window is going to let us select our different parts of our character. Now, when I'm in the perspective window or any other view, you can see that my image plane is visible, and that can be a little bit distracting. So if you don't want that, just go ahead and go into your select camera, and then we'll go to our attribute editor, go to our image plane, and we're just going to click on looking through camera instead of in all views. And when you do that, you can see it just shows in the roto camera, which is what we want. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to snap our IK arms to these locators. So let's just go ahead and select these blends, our IK FK blends on our rig, and we'll just switch to IK mode. So I'm going to snap constraint, create a parent constraint between this locator and your and the hands. So if I select my locator, this is my L hand, then I'm going to shift select my IK control here, and I'm going to go to constrain, and I'm going to go to parent. I want to make sure that my maintain offsets is off. So let's just add that. You can see it moves the hand down there to that constraint. We'll do the same thing with our R hand. Constrain parent. Okay, so now we see that we need to turn the hands in. So let's start with our L hand. We're going to turn it in 90 degrees. So we'll just change this to negative 90, and then we'll move it up slightly. So this is going to be constraining to basically the wrist. So we're going to move this up, and we're going to move it forward. Now, you can do this on the constraint, but one of the things that I like to do is leave the constraint at 0 and do the same thing on these groups that you've created. Okay, so let's just let's rename that, and let's do the same thing. Let's rotate this negative 90, and let's move this up. The reason I like to do that is because then it gives you the ability to animate this L target. This is the constraint, or pardon me, the locator, to add some additional movement to the hands if you want to. So we'll bring this in slightly. And we just want to get the bar into the crease in the arm there. Don't worry about it snapping out. So let's take a look at these values. It's going to be, let's just say 60, 15, and 3.5. That's what we're going to do. So we'll do the same thing with our hand constraint. So we'll change this to negative 60. We'll change this to 3. What was it? 3.5. That was 9. So we'll do that. Okay, we'll just change this. We'll move this up, and we're going to rotate it 90 degrees. You can see it does the same thing with that hand. And then we'll just move it so that our hand is, the crease is in the bar is in the crease of the hand there. Okay, so we've got our hands positioned correctly. Now you'll notice that if we take these hand constraint node and we move it around, we can move the arms and we can rotate the hands around the bar. Now we need to do something so that we don't break this. If we key these IK controls, this is going to break that constraint. So what we want to do is we just want to select our IK controls. In the scene, we're going to remove it from our all keyable set. So you're going to say remove selection from set all keyable, remove selection from set L arm, and then we're going to remove them from the R arm. So now we won't have them in any of our selection sets to key, but we can key the locators in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the locators and the hand constraints node, and we're going to add that to our all keyable set so that we can key that with all of our main keyframes. Okay, so we've done that now. We need to move the character so that he isn't having these snapped arms. The next thing we want to do is we want to rotate the clavicles down, and so that our arms are slightly bent. And then we're going to go ahead and rotate our fingers into position. So if you select your finger control nodes, you can just go ahead and grip them. And you can see that our fingers are rotating, our wrists are rotated a little bit differently here. So let's just go ahead and turn our wrists slightly. You could do that using those locators that you had. And so now it looks like our character is grabbing the bar. Okay, in our reference, you'll see that the character's head is up. So let's select our neck and our head joints, and we'll just rotate those so that our character is up. The last thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to select the back, and you're going to want to add a slight curvature to the back because he's got his chest up and back in the motion. Okay, so we've created a good starting key pose. You can see it's not matching the video perfectly, but it is giving us a really good feel for the same pose that our character has. That little bend in the elbows is good because when our character starts to pull, we'll go ahead and snap that straight and it'll be a good contrast. So let's select all of our keyable controls, and we're just going to go ahead and key those. So let's hit S. Now I'm going to run through and make the key poses, and then I'm going to break those down with you guys so you don't have to watch me go and make each key pose, but we'll evaluate those key poses and see exactly what they are. One of the things you'll notice is when you move the barbell, it's not going to move our hands. We want those hands to move with the barbell. So in order to do that, we need to take our hand constraints node, which is what does control the hands. And we're just going to parent that under our barbell. Just select it and then hit P. And now when we move our barbell, we're going to be able to move those hands too. That's exactly what we want. Okay, so now I've gone in and I've made individual key poses that match our reference video. If you'll notice over here in our channel box, we can always hide the character and you can see the roto video behind it. So let's just go ahead and hit Alt-1. We're going to hide most of our controls. You can also go here to show viewport, and you can turn off your joints. If you go down here to joints, you can turn off your joints. So now we're just going to be seeing basically the reference with our character. If we just show our male character, we're going to be seeing those. So let's take a look at the different key poses. So the first one is that key pose that we created right at the beginning, where our character is kind of like bent over, they're ready to lift the weight. So then I went here to frame 18. So there's a little bit of a slow lead off. The first part of the clean is usually the pull. So we're pulling it up off the ground. It's like a modified deadlift. And you can see it right here at frame 18. I've created a character. Now, here in the reference video, because it's at 24 frames a second, it's a little bit off. You can set it at frame 16, you can set it at frame 18, but what we want is we want to capture the bar just at the knees, the hands straight, the shoulders reaching, and then the head up. And you can play around with that, matching that pose, but I've created that because that's going to be the end of the state that transition into the pull. So here he's going to pull. In order to do that, he's going to dip his hips a little bit, and he's going to slide those hips forward. You can see that the shoulders and arms are bearing the weight of that, and that his knees are slightly bent. The head here is a little bit up, and you can play around with that. If you want, you can bring the head more down or level just to match the video. And then here is the explosive part of it. So he's basically pulling with all of his might, and that weight is coming up to the center of his mass here. He's going to hit it with his hips as he explodes upward. And so we're exploding upward, and then there's this where the bar is moving upward. Now in a clean, you generate all of the power at the bottom of the clean, and then the arms they aren't pulling, they're sort of like just following the bar. So we see the bar is still horizontal with the ground. Those wrists are bent, and we've got our elbows up. And you can take these elbows and you can even raise them up just a little bit more in this key pose. But what you'll notice is all of our keys are on single keyframes. So we're keeping it very, very clean. Now don't worry, he does a little bit of a jump here where he separates his feet. We're going to tie that down with breakdown poses later. So the next pose is going to be the standing pose with that bar pulled high. And then here he's going to dive under the bar. So that bar is going to come, it's going to meet his upper chest. He's going to roll the wrists under, and the way that you do that is you're actually rotating the bar. So we're animating the bar as we go here. So he's standing up, we're moving the bar upwards, and then in the part where he rolls, let me undo that. In the part where he rolls, we're actually rolling the bar, and you can play around with how his hands are positioned there, and we're rolling the bar under. So one of the things you'll notice is when we do that, we have to take these elbow controls and we have to move them forward. If they are still behind your character, you're going to get something like this. So we're taking it and we're moving it all the way forward. If we look at it in our perspective window, we can see that these are kind of pulled out at a 45-degree angle from the body of the character. And then here in frame 44, they're just going to sit sort of to the front. And that points your elbows front, and it allows you to roll those wrists under. If we look at the bar, it is rotated negative 246 degrees. So it is rotated 3/4 of a full rotation all the way under. And that's how you get those wrists coming underneath. That bar comes down to meet his upper chest. So I usually just line it up with the clavicles there. And we can see that the hips dipped underneath here in order to get that weight bearing on the character. So he's diving under, his hips are dipping. Then in our next key pose, their character is going to be standing up. When he stands up, that weight slides down slightly on his chest. If you just look at that difference, you can see it slides down slightly. And then the elbows stay out front. And then there's this key pose where the character kind of comes up onto his toes to absorb the weight. And then the bar slightly separates or comes up off the chest. The last key pose is going to be the settle, and we'll add to this in our breakdown poses where our character is bearing the weight but standing very, very tall. The knees are slightly bent, the hips are straight and aimed forward, and then the chest is up and our head is forward. So those are the key poses. Let's just go ahead and break them down one more time. We've got the pull here between 0 and 18. At 18, you've got the start of the explosive movement. He dips his hips. At frame 25, we see the explosive upward movement where he's generating the power to pull that clean up to his chest. And then at frame 34, we see the bar coming up. This is a reaction of the explosive movement here between frame 21 and 25. And then at frame 39, we're going to roll under. So he dips his hips again. They come forward and it compensates with the back and the chest. The chest leans back and up. And the bar rotates over. So between 34, where it's at negative 52 degrees, and then frame 39, we rotate it almost 3/4 of a turn. That allows the wrists to sit on basically the shoulders and the elbows to come forward. Remember to pull your elbow targets forward so we get that pose. Okay, and then here at frame 44, our character is absorbing the weight. That bar is still resting very much on the chest, and the hips are dipping even more. At frame 54, we're going to stand up. Our character is fully stood up, but not up on his toes yet. And that bar is still resting on his chest. At frame 59, we have the character come up onto his toes. I'm doing that with a roll. You can just roll the toes. And then we are keeping the chest up, and that bar is also coming up off of the chest. Remember, whenever you translate the hips, you have to translate the bar as well. If you don't, and you just translate the hips or the root, that bar stays stationary. It is outside of that character. So when you need to move up and down, move the bar and the root together. And then frame 68 is just going to be our absorb pose. This is going to be our last pose that we're going to settle into. We'll add some settling when we do our breakdown. So let's take a look at the breakdown poses that I add now. Okay, so now if I select all my keyable controls, you can see that I've gone and I've added in some breakdown poses, including a settle. I've extended the animation to frame 91. And if I run through it, you can see some of the breakdown poses. So these explosive poses are still the same. But here I've got a little bit more of a character up on the toes. So I've added a push up further on the hips or the root, and I've added a roll to the toes. And then here I've got that jump. So I've quickened up the foot placement. If you'll notice in the reference video, the character's feet, they kind of hop and then they quickly re-square wider. So that's what I've done. I've added in that little jump. So between frame 31, where he's up on his toes, and frame 33, very quick movement, those feet come up, there's no more roll, and they're pointed toward the ground. You can see that his feet are slightly angled toward the ground. The whole foot or the whole sole of the foot is up off the ground. And then at frame 36, he lands. Now there's no cushion to the landing. This is a very, very straight, static land. If you want, you can add some roll to the keyframe to your feet, just a little bit of roll to pull the heels up off the ground at frame 36, and then at frame 38, get rid of that roll altogether. That kind of adds a little bit of cushion. You can see that he does something like that here between frame 36 and 38. And then at frame 45, this is our roll under pose. So you can see what I've done is I've added a little bit of backwards movement to the chest. So here his chest is more upright, and then at frame 53, his chest rotates back, and then his head is sort of rolling forward to compensate, right? So this is exaggerating on top of just the straight video that I've gotten. So at this point, you've already gotten all your key poses from your video. You can actually turn that off if you want and just see what your animation looks like. So if you go into your camera, you can go to the attribute editor, you can select your image pose, and you can turn this alpha gain to 0. So it'll turn your that video off. And then we'll just go ahead and run through, and now you can see your character kind of runs through the animation. It also allows it to play a little bit faster depending on your video card. The last thing I've done here at the end is I've added a little bit of a settle. So here we see our character standing up again, and then the character is going to come back down. Now you'll see the bar separate from the chest, right? So he pushes the bar up a little bit with that upward movement. The bar stays up straight and high, a little bit off of his chest. Then at frame 75, he comes back down onto his feet, no more toe roll. And then here at frame 79, that bar comes back down to meet the chest, and we see that little bit of a dip in the hips, and then he recovers here at frame 84. And you can play around with the relationship of the bar here to the chest. You can slide it down a little bit. You can rotate it a little bit. And what that does is it gives it the sense that that bar is not attached to his chest, but sort of sliding on it just a little bit. And then he stands up and into the final pose. Now these two final poses here, 88 and 91, they are the same pose, but what I'll do here is after his feet meet the ground, I'll change all of these to spline tangents, and that gives that character just a little bit of a play in this settle. So now we've got the whole animation. If I play through it, you can see that all the key poses are there. But overall, it feels very slow. Some of that is because my reference video is from 24 frames a second. I'm translating that into 30 frames a second with my animation. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to select all of my keys. I'm going to scale them and then and just quicken up the animation overall, then play with some of the timing within that. So let's just select all of our keys, which are right now at 91 frames in length. And let's pull that back. Let's do something a little dramatic, and let's just pull it back to about 72 frames. Let's just go ahead and play through it now. So you can see that already that looks a little bit better. You also want to play blast this. Don't just trust what your viewport gives you. Go ahead and play blast through. I think that this explosive movement can be a little bit faster. So let's just go ahead and select all of these, and we'll quicken this up, and then we'll snap those. So now my character explodes a little bit faster. And then this dive under is also a little bit slow. So we'll just come under and bring this back. So let's just bring that. So our character rolls up and then he hits that and snaps. So this snap here against the body, it's a little bit fast. So let's just go ahead and add a frame there and play around with it. So again, make some of these tangents spline just to see what they look like. This is kind of the process of animation, playing around with it. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of a play. Okay, so we're looking better now. Let me go in and refine this a little bit, and let's take a look at the finished product. All right, so I've gone in and I've retimed this to be a little bit better. Our character's a little bit more explosive. You're seeing a little bit of a hitch. Most of that is just playing here in the viewport. Now, if you go into your perspective window, let's go ahead and stop that. Go into our perspective window. We can evaluate it here from different poses, right? So you can go ahead and you can move around your character and you can see how they feel. And that's basically the process of rotoscoping an animation. The best thing you can do is to use that video for reference. Don't try to copy it exactly, and then evaluate the animation separate from the video, just with your own animator's eye, just to make sure that it looks good. Good luck and have fun.